Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you decided to join me. Today I'm going to show you how to make these fun little tug and pull emoji toys. And the great thing about these is not only are there just endless possibilities for the faces that you can make with them, but they're also just fun toys to play with because you can pull on their arms and legs to make them shorter and longer. So they're a fun little fidget toy. So there's a lot of different traditional emoji faces you could do. If you've seen the Emoji movie, there's some fun ones in there too. I made this guy to resemble the main character in that movie, but let's go ahead and get started. For this tutorial, you are going to need some sturdy yarn. I used Bernat blanket yarn. You don't want to use yarn that breaks easily or sheds a lot and comes apart, just because with the fidget toy nature of this toy, if you're pulling on the arms and legs a lot and your yarn isn't sturdy, it's just not going to hold up very well. So again, I used Bernat blanket yarn. You can also make it with just regular worsted weight yarn if you want. It ends up a lot smaller than this, but it does work with that as well. And then if you're gonna crochet the face onto it, you're gonna need some worsted weight yarn in a couple different colors, like red and black here for this face. If you'd rather make a felt face, you'll need some felt to make that face out of. And depending on what face you want to put on it, you might need safety eyes as well. This one, for example, I just use one safety eye, but there are a lot of different options for faces. So decide what kind of face you want and plan accordingly. Beyond that, scissors, I think I said we need a sewing or a yarn needle for sewing the face on, and a couple other things. For the main body part, I'm going to be using this size 6 crochet hook with the blanket yarn, and then I also have a smaller one for the face pieces. You'll need some fabric glue, permanent fabric glue, and there's a lot of different types that would work. You'll need some stuffing, some stitch markers, and you'll also need something to put inside to contain the stuffing. And I'm just going to use a short piece of nylon here, and I'll tie the ends to hold it in there. But the reason you need that inside is because if you just put stuffing inside here without it enclosed in something and you start playing with it here, the stuffing will start to come out these holes. It will grab it and pull out with the arms and legs. So you need some kind of pouch basically inside for the stuffing to go inside. You could also sew something out of fabric or any other little pouch that will keep that stuffing enclosed. Most of this pattern uses super simple, just basic stitches. There is one though that you may not have heard of or used before. It's called a long tail foundation base chain, or sometimes called an I-cord, but it's super simple and I'm going to show you how to do it, so don't let it scare you. But we're going to start by making 2 sets of these arm leg pieces here. And I really hate doing a chain stitch and then going back and crocheting single crochets into the chain. So this method I feel like works so much better. You end up with I feel like it looks nicer. It's more rounded rather than flat. It's just a little bit stretchy, but it just works perfectly for this type of project, and I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to start with a long tail. I measured about 25 inches here. And that will vary depending on how tight your tension is when you crochet and what type of yarn you use. But for my tension and for this Bernat blanket yarn, I started with about 25. And after you've done a couple, you can kind of get a better idea of if that's about how much you need or if you can get by with more or less. So anyway, I measured this 25 inches and I did a slip knot right there to start. And I'm going to take this tail that I measured, I'm going to wrap it from the front to the back around my hook, and then I'm going to take the other one, my working yarn, and wrap it from the back to the front like that. I'll grab onto this little knot right here. I don't know if you can see that, where I made the slip knot, and I just pull that through that working chain, or the working yarn from the skein here. And I just pulled that through, and then I've just got one loop on my hook again. So we're going to do 3 of those to start. So I'll show you again. You have your hook through your loop, you take this tail that you measured to start, and you go around from the front to the back, and then you take your other working yarn, go around from the back to the front, and then just pull it through. There's 2, and we're gonna do that one more time. After you've practiced this a little bit, you can kind of figure out how to hold your hands to make it a little faster and easier. I usually have my this tail that I cut down between my ring finger and my pinky finger, and then I have that up there, and I just kind of wrap it around that way and grab the top one like that. And you can get pretty quick at it after practicing a little bit. But we're gonna make this foot here. We're working on making this foot on the bottom of our arm and leg combo pieces. So we did 3 of those long tail foundation base chains. Then we're just gonna do one chain stitch. You wanna make sure that's coming from your working yarn, not your tail. And now if you look at what you've done already, it's kind of hard to see with the plush yarn. It's a little bit easier if you're using the worsted weight, but along here, it's kind of looks like the top of a chain if you had just chained 3, and we're gonna work into those stitches. So I just did my chain 1. I'm gonna turn back here, go into that first stitch and do a slip stitch. Then in the second one, I will also do a slip stitch. And in this last one, I am going to do 4 half double crochets. So I yarn over, I go through that last stitch there. It's just kind of the middle, through the middle of the end there. I did that one a little tight, so it's kind of hard to get through there. Pull up a loop. Yeah, I made that one too tight. Now you should have 3 loops on the hook. You grab it and pull through all 3. And that's your first half double crochet. And we're going to do 3 more of those all in that end stitch. There we go. I did that one too tight, so it was a little bit hard to get into there. Okay, but now we're on the other side of that original long tail foundation base chain, and you should have 2 more stitches right there. And we're just gonna do slip stitches in those again like we started with. So 1 slip stitch and another slip stitch. So that makes the basic shape of your foot. That's the bottom of it. If you turn it over, that's the top. Okay, now I'm gonna take this long tail. It's kind of coming out to the left here. I'm gonna move it over to the right because I want it out of the way for the next stitch that I do. If you're looking at the bottom of your foot here, you can kind of see there's like a corner right there that sticks out a little bit, and I just kind of want to pull the end of the foot together so that it looks better. So I'm going to go through that stitch that's sticking out. It's from my chain stitch that I did. And I'm going to slip stitch there, and that just pulls the end of the foot together. Now the next part, this is maybe a little bit untraditional, but if you look at the foot here, we want it to curve, or we want it to make a turn here and look like a foot, right? Your leg and the heel there. We don't want it to just be straight like that. We want it to turn. So in order to do that, I'm going to pull this out just a little bit, make my loop a little bigger so it doesn't come out. I'm going to turn my foot over to the top side, and we can bring this long tail back over here on the left again. But I'm basically just going to look, there's kind of a hole right there, right in the middle of the top of the back side of my foot where I want the leg to be coming up. I'll put my hook down through there, and I'm going to grab this loop with my hook and pull it up through there. And that's what's going to help us change direction so that we actually have that turn from the foot to the leg. And then you're going to want to pull on that to make sure it's not loose, because I made it a little bigger to start with. I don't want a big loose loop there. So make that tight. And here's where we're going to make the just this chain part, but I'm going to do that long tail foundation base chain, or the I-cord. So I will show you again a couple real quick. This is my tail that's cut. This is my working yarn. I'm going to take my cut tail, go over the hook from the front to the back, and then your working yarn from the back to the front, and pull it through. And we need to do 25 of those for this pattern. Okay, I just finished 25 of those long tail foundation base chains, and I've just got a little bit left of that tail, so that was cut about perfect. And we need to make the hand on our emoji man. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by chaining 4, and then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do a slip stitch in the back of that first chain, and then I'm going to chain 3, and I'm going to slip stitch again in that exact same spot. I'm going to chain 3 again, and again slip stitch in that same original chain. And now I'm ready to cut my yarn. So I'll leave just a little bit of a tail, I don't need too much, and I'm just going to pull that through. And you want to make sure that's cinched down right in there and pull it tight. Do it is that my ends are right here together, and I can just go ahead and tie them in a square knot, and it keeps it extra secure there. Now a lot of times when you're crocheting you can just weave the ends in here. The problem with this one is that because this is the part that you're playing with and it gets pulled on and stretched, the ends are likely to come out if you just try to weave it in. It's also so tiny and skinny that there's really not a lot of room to hide it. So what I do instead is I will take my yarn needle and thread it onto here. And I'm going to go in just a little bit. I don't go down very far. It's already fairly secure because you've got your knots at the beginning, you've got you pulled it through on your last stitch, and then you did a square knot, so it's already tied and very secure. We just need to hide those ends. So I just go through a little bit, just down that much. I do that with both of them. Make sure they're coming out in different spots. Like I said, it doesn't need to be very far down there. And I like to pull on this a little bit to pull them out enough that when it's pulled on later, it won't be putting more tension on the part where it's glued, just to make sure they're not like cinched down in there. And then I'm going to cut it off pretty short, leave just a tiny little bit sticking out there. And this is where the glue comes in. You want to make sure that you have a good quality permanent fabric adhesive that will hold it together so that it won't come apart. So what I'm going to do here is there's kind of a hole there where that end is coming out. I'm going to put the glue right in there, just a little bit. You don't need too much. If you get too much in there, you end up having kind of a big hard lump inside the hand when you're done. But I just put a tiny little bit of glue in there, and I use my needle to kind of push it down inside the hole, and then I push that end down inside with it, and then you can kind of pinch that together around it, and you can't even hardly see it. Now you just want to make sure that you don't stretch this or play with it until that glue is dry. So you set that in there and do the other side, and then you need to make a second one of these so that we have 2 arms and legs. Now that you've made your 2 arm and leg combo pieces, we are ready to move on to the body. To make the body, we're going to start with a magic ring, and we will do 8 single crochets into that magic ring. Sometimes it's hard to pull a magic ring tight with blanket yarn, so you want to kind of make sure that these aren't pulled too tight as you're doing these single crochets. And sometimes I stop after 5 or 6 and I start to pull it a little ways just to make it easier. And then I will finish. I think I have 2 more here. And then you can finish pulling that tight. Okay, that is our first round. For our second round, we're going to start with 2 increases. So here's our first stitch, and I will go ahead and put a stitch marker in that one. And then increase that same stitch. Then I'm going to do a second increase. Okay, in my third stitch, instead of doing an increase, I'm going to do 1 single crochet, and then I'm going to do a chain, and this is where I'm going to put my first leg, where I'm going to put my first leg. I guess it's all one piece. But you'll take one of your pieces and make sure that you have the foot at the bottom, because you don't want the foot coming out where the arms are supposed to come out. So get the foot and you'll just stick it right there, right next to your work. So you just did a single crochet and then a chain stitch in that stitch. That kind of acts as your increase for that stitch, and we're going to go around that leg piece to the next one, and we'll do an increase there. Then we're going to do another increase. We should be on our 6th stitch now, and right here we are going to put our other leg, so we need to do a chain. And then we're going to get our other piece, make sure the foot is at the bottom here, put it right next to that, and then going around, we're going to do 1 single crochet into that 6th stitch. Now we should just have 2 left, so we're just going to do 2 more increases. And on that round, we should have a total of 16 stitches. It's kind of like doing increases all the way around, except that we did a chain stitch there and there so that we could place our arms and legs. The next round is we're going to do a single crochet first, and then we will do an increase, and we're going to repeat that pattern around a total of 8 times. Okay, our first increase is going to fall right where this hole is for the leg. And instead of just trying to go through the chain, I just go right through the hole, the same hole that the leg is in, and I do an increase in that hole. Now the next stitch can be a little bit tricky. It's easy to skip this one right here, the one coming right after the chain. If you skip that one, you'll end up having 2 stitches shorter in this round than you should. So make sure you get that first one right after the chain. That was a single crochet. Now I'm on an increase. Okay, the second leg hole, I'm on a single crochet, not an increase, so I'll just go through that hole, do my single crochet, and again, make sure you don't skip this stitch right after the chain. It can be a little tricky there, but I'm going to do my increase in there. Okay, we're at the end of round 3. We should have 24 stitches there. For round 4, we're just going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase all the way around, a total of 8 times, and we will end up with 32 stitches there. So 1 single crochet, 2, and an increase. We are now to round 5, and this is where the arms are going to come out. So we're going to start by single crocheting 8. There's my first one. Okay, here's number 8, and this is where we're going to have the arm come out. So after single crocheting 8, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to take the arm. We want to make sure it's the one connected to this side. We don't want them crossed in the middle, and we'll just put it right there next to that. And we're going to skip the next stitch there to make that hole. See, so I single crocheted there. We're going to skip that stitch, and we'll single crochet in the next one. So it makes that hole for the arm to come out. Then after that, we're going to do 14 more single crochets. So there will be a total of 15 between the arms. Okay, now that I've done 15, I am ready to bring my other arm out, and I do it the same way. I will do a chain stitch to go over that arm. I'll bring it and put it in that space there, skip a stitch, and then single crochet in the next one. And then to finish off, we're just gonna single crochet 6 more to get back to the beginning. And if you want to check and kind of make sure that they line up a little bit here, you can look at your bottom, the bottom piece here. I like the arms are supposed to be directly across from each other, right across the middle. And then the legs are just slightly forward, slightly this way of center. This stitch here is, or this stitch marker is the back there. So you can check and make sure those are lined up. And I guess if they're not, you can go back and adjust them. But for the next 5 rounds, rounds 6 through 10, we are just going to single crochet all the way around, 32 stitches on each round for 5 rounds. So I will go ahead and meet you back after I've done that. Now that I have my 5 rows of single crochet done, I am ready to start on round 11. And this is where we will start decreasing to start getting smaller at the top of the head. So we're just going to do 2 single crochets to start, and then a decrease, and we will repeat that pattern all the way around and have a total of 24 stitches at the end of the round. We are now on around 12, and we will just do 1 single crochet and a decrease. We're just kind of doing the opposite that we did on the bottom. As we were getting bigger, we're getting back down smaller to make a ball. So 1 single crochet and decrease all the way around. Now that we've finished round 12, this is where I like to start to stop and add the face. So I pull that loop out a little bit just so it doesn't come undone while I'm working on it. And this stitch marker is the back. You remember the legs were a little bit closer to the front than the back. So this is where I like to stop and add my face. You can do it a couple of different ways. If you're just going to embroider the whole thing on, you can wait until after you're all done and do that at the end. You just need to remember, if you're doing the embroidery, that you're going to have that pouch inside. I'm using nylon, but whatever you use, it might be harder to sew through. You probably don't want to make holes through it with your yarn if it's nylon, because then it will come apart. So you want to keep that in mind if you're going to embroider the face, and you'll have to go close to the surface kind of around that pouch. But I feel like it's easier to just do it here before it's stuffed. So I'm going to make another video, and I will post a link to that, of how to do a couple different faces. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Like I said, you can embroider the whole thing on. If you want to do a felt face, you can cut out pieces of felt and either glue or sew them on like here. This one also has safety eyes, so you can do a combination. This one has just one safety eye, so if you're going to use safety eyes, you'll need to put those in at this stage. Or you can, these ones are just, this part is just embroidered here. Or you can do ones like this where you actually crochet pieces and sew them on. And I will show how to do these pieces in the video. So check that out if you want to make one of the faces like mine. And I will come back after we've done that and show you how to finish him off. Now that I'm done adding the face to my emoji, I am ready to finish him off. So we talked at the beginning about having something to put the stuffing inside. I have just a piece of nylon here. If you're using the toe of the nylon, you won't need to tie a knot in both ends, but this is just a section. So I already tied a knot in that end. And I'm going to actually put the knot on the inside. And I will start by grabbing a little bit of my polyfill here. And I actually put it down inside before I've put all the polyfill in that I want. You can kind of pull the edges out like this as you continue stuffing. And it's up to you how full you want him stuffed. If you want him more firm, if you want him a little bit soft and squishy. I kind of try to go somewhere in the middle. And then once you've got as much as you want in there, then you can go ahead and you can either tie a knot in this end, or if you want to put a piece of yarn around that, if it's not quite long enough. I might have made this one a little on the short side for tying a knot. We'll see if I can get it here. If it's not quite long enough, you could tie string, take just a piece of string or yarn, tie around the top to hold that closed. There we go, I got the knot. I think, yep. Okay, so that keeps that stuffing enclosed so that it won't come out of those holes there. And we only have one more round to finish our emoji man. So if you remember, we ended with 16 stitches around on our last one. So this time we are just going to decrease all the way around. It will be a total of 8 decreases. I've done my 8 decreases. Now I'm just going to cut the tail, leave a little bit for finishing it off. I will pull that tail through. And then again, I'm going to grab my yarn needle. And I am just going to go up from the front to the back in the front loop only of each of my 8 stitches around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Once I've done that, little fuzz there. Okay, once I've done that, I can just cinch it up nice and tight, close up that hole. And we just need to tie this off. So you'll need to remember, like we've talked about before, that you do have that, pull that a little tighter, there's still a hole there. Okay, you do have the nylon thing inside, and I don't want to go through that with my needle, because if I make a hole in it, it could start to come apart. So you kind of want to go sideways close to the surface here, rather than straight down through it if you're going to tie it off. So I'll come out just a little ways down here and tie a knot. Maybe do one more just to make sure that it's nice and secure and isn't gonna come undone. And then I can just hide that in there. You can either grab your hook and pull that down inside, or you can cut that off there. And we are all done. You can kind of shape him if he looks a little squarish. So he's nice and round, and there's our fun toy. Now if you have kids in your house like I do, and this is not for them, you might have to hide it somewhere, because my kids just love to play with these. All of the tug and pull toys that I do, they have so much fun, and they always want to find them and go play with them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have as much fun making these and playing with them as I have had, and I would love to know what you think and how yours turned out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a nice day.